Hello everyone, welcome to Offensive Security Society Red Team videos. In this video, we will be covering about installing and setting up Burp Suite for testing web app security as well as other mobile apps when it comes to using some kind of proxy in between the website or the mobile app and your system so that you can see the request that's going through these applications. Most of the time we'll be using Burp Suite for many security tests against a website, against a mobile app, unless there's chances for us to decrypt something, to play around with source code. That's in those cases we'll be using different tools and manual codes for those cases. For now, in this video we will cover installation and setup of Burp Suite, as well as go over two features that Burp Suite has, repeater as well as intruder, and we'll be covering about how that feature is used, how you can use that when you're testing a web app. Let's get started with installation. When you're starting your installation on Burp Suite, you can either search Burp Suite Community Edition, so you can just do this and it will show you the first result. Basically tells you download Burp Suite Community Edition. You can also directly go to the website portswigger.net/burp/community download. This link will be attached on the description page of our YouTube video, so you can just click on that and go to this installation page directly. The Community Edition is the free version that Burp Suite has. There's also a Pro and an Enterprise Edition. Those cost money per license per user for 1 year. So if you want to do it, it's on your own expense. The free version also works for most of the cases, for I'll say 99% of the cases, unless you have to use one of the tools that the Pro version has. In this case, I'm using a Windows operating system, so the installation will be focused on Windows. We'll also have a video on setting it up for Linux, especially Kali Linux, but the installation process on Linux will exactly be the same for all the Linux versions. So when you're using Windows, you can go with two processes of installation. You can either download the jar file and run it as Java file, or you can download the exe file that they have and install it and run it directly from there. Jar file has the same process, exe has the same. I like to use exe, so I'll be going with that. Once you do that, the exe file will be downloaded. It's about 90 megabytes in size, so depending on your internet speed, your upload and download speed that you have, either at home, either at school, it will depend on how long it will take. So for me, it's going to take around 10 seconds now, so let's wait for that. So once your download finishes, you can just open the exe file like installing a regular exe file or any software that in Windows. So we'll basically be following the same steps on this. So as you can see, Burp Suite is right now setting up the installation wizard, going through the process of the setup. I will not go over the setup here because there's nothing that much critical here, and also I already have Burp Suite Community Edition, so let me cancel this now. Once you have it installed, if there is something going wrong, let us know and we'll be ready to help you. But if you don't let us know, then there is no way for us to know. So once you have the Community Edition open, you can just go and open the app or the software, or if you have a jar file, just download and run the jar file. If your version is outdated, it will ask you if there's if you want to update it. For now, I'm just going to skip, but it is highly recommended to update these features or update this app, because there will be security fixes as well as feature fixes, so you can see new features, update to old features, and such like that. So let's go with next and start Burp. Let me cover a little bit part on the front here right now. So in some cases you can have a specific configuration file set up for Burp, and in this case you can set it up manually. I think there are some automated tools, online configurations that you can download and run. I usually like to just go with the default because at that time they'll already have everything saved. The only difference with Community Edition, as you can see, is you cannot open a saved project because Community does not allow you to save a project completely, so you will not be able to save this project or anything like that. You'll be able to rename it. If you want to save the copy, it will say Pro version only, or importing it. So this is the window of Burp Suite. As you can see, it has target, proxy, and all the other features. Now we're going to set up Firefox to be able to send all its packet as it is going, every request that we make through Firefox to Burp. So Burp will be acting as a middleman before we send a request, and that is really easy to set up with Firefox. With Chrome you have to set up certification on your root depending on how you are doing your setups on which operating systems. But in all operating systems, Firefox setup is pretty much the same, so we'll be going over that. So let me do a two-side window and let's get started. So initially you'll have an intercept on. You can turn it off if you want, but because we haven't set it up with Firefox yet, you will not see any requests going on. So let's go to options and start the setup. So if you go on about :preferences, it will load an options page, and right on the bottom, if you have the latest Firefox, it will have a network settings option. Click on settings, then go to manual proxy configuration because we'll be using a manual setup, and you can use different setup here. So if you want to do a localhost listening, for example, Burp by default uses localhost port 8080 for listening into the request. You can do that, or you can edit this request and put your computer's IP, in my case 192.168.167, on port 8080 to listen. So you can do the same, you can do any of those. This becomes extremely useful if you're using a mobile app and you're intercepting requests from a iOS device, mobile device over on this operating system, or in this Burp. Or also, let's say you have two computers and you want to listen all the requests coming from computer A on computer B, then having a specific address or all interfaces is super useful, because then you'll be able to listen to all the requests on that by sending the request there. For this one, we'll just be using loopback, which is localhost port 8080, and that is mainly used for in computer setups. So if you're just using one computer, everything is going to happen in this computer, then using localhost is useful. So for STTP proxy, this is so as we set up the proxy config, I'm going to explain what all these are. STTP proxy is for intercepting any website proxy for regular websites, not SSL. That for SSL website, you'll be using an SSL proxy instead. So we'll be using the same thing throughout, however, so we're just gonna set up that. So we have STTP proxy sending request. So Burp is listening, this is sending it to localhost port 8080, and Burp will be receiving it there for any website that does not have SSL. But if you want to intercept requests for SSL, FTP, and other stuff, it is recommended to use the same thing. So just use the same port. We'll be using the same, because all of these will be sending it back to Burp Suite at localhost port 8080. So if you don't want to type this multiple times, you can just go and use this proxy server for all protocols, and it will set that up. Now let's say you are testing a website on your own environment. If you create a website and you want to listen to it and you want to test security of that, if you set no proxy for as localhost and local and 127.0.0.1, it will not listen to any, or Firefox won't send any of those requests to Burp. It will just directly go through. So you can just remove that if you want to do it. It is your choice. There's no there's no bad thing that will happen with that, so you'll be fine. And let's hit OK. So now this will make Burp ready to go, and we can give it a shot by just doing intercept on and going to a regular website like example.com. And once we do that, you can see Firefox is trying to send the request, but because we have intercept on, it will first show up here before it goes to or sends a request to example.com and loads the website. So if you go on intercept, as you can see, as soon as I did a forward, it sends the request through, and now we see that the next request coming in is example.com, which is the website we are loading. If you want to drop the request, and if you don't want the request to go through, you can just hit drop and it will drop it, or if you hit forward, it will go through. So for example, if I want to drop it, I'll just hit drop and it will say request was dropped by the user. But let's say if I want to go, then there we have it, and I'll hit forward and the website will load. Now in some cases you want to play around with the website. Let's say if there's a request coming in that is super interesting, you want to play around with it and see what's going on, you can send it to what is called repeater on Burp, and there's two ways to do it. So we have this, you can do either action and send to repeater, and it will send it right here. on the repeaters tab, it will exist there, and you can play around with it. For example, it'll be the same request. Let's forward that. So let me go over repeater feature real quick while we are at this. So what repeater does is that it sends your request that you sent to Firefox and it saves it in Burp. So this request is no longer being sent through Firefox anymore when I'm sending this. So for example, if I do this, you will not, if I make a request to 4S's or something like that, you will not see that response on Firefox. You'll see it in Burp itself. And Burp does have a render feature where it will show you the what the HTML render of the website is. This feature, however, for Burp version 1.7.x, for those versions, it will not render JavaScript. So let's say if you have a website that's loading some kind of client-side code on it and then rendering based on that, it will not be able to execute those. But you'll be able to see all the HTML requests here. So you can see what the response was of the website. You can see the headers that it responded with right here, and you can see the raw response. And this is basically, it has all the things added to it. So it has headers on the top part, and the response in HTML format on the second part. So that's Burp Repeater. And if you want to play around with, for example, host, let's say you want to try something else, you can just configure it here and then send the request. Now that we have set up the basics of Burp, let's see if Facebook.com loads with Burp. Right there is what we're going to fix now. If you see, when I went to Facebook.com, it will tell me your connection is not secure, and that's because Firefox is sending an SSL request to Burp, but because the certificates that Firefox has or Facebook has does not match with what Firefox is getting from Burp, or any of those requests don't match, it seems like there's a man-in-the-middle attack. What Firefox thinks is that someone is listening in our request, someone is going to play around with it, trying to hijack our session or our username, whatever we put in the system. So it tells me my connection is not secure, and Facebook.com says, it technically says Facebook has configured it improperly, but it's not Facebook's fault, because at this point we are doing a man in the middle where we are seeing the request in Burp, and then it does not trust that response or to trust that request. So in that case, we'll need to install a certificate on Firefox to allow Burp to be able to intercept this request. So for that, all you have to do is go to http:/burp, and because we are listening through Burp, it is able to accept that as a valid web URL and then loads us the content. So as soon as you go there, there's a CA certificate option. Do that. Once you click on it, it will ask you to open or save. Go with save first, and once you click on it, it will ask you, do you want to install the certificate? We don't want to install it here because this will install it on the Windows system. We want to install it on Firefox. So what we'll do is go on options again, and in options we're going to look for certificates, and as you do, as you type that, you'll see it shows you view certificate options, or if you want to do anything else. In this case, we want to view all the list of certificates that we have, and we're going to import one of the certificates. So if we go to our download section, we'll see the certificate that we just downloaded. We're going to open CACERT certificate, and it will ask us if we want to trust this CA to identify websites, and we do want to do that because we want to be able to trust Facebook and be able to see all the requests on Burp. And let's say if you're doing some kind of email request through Burp, or if you want to do some kind of request through Firefox in the future, you can also select the identify email users and hit OK. Once that is done, you should be able to just hit OK here, and you should be able to go to Facebook.com and it will load the website as needed. So as you can see now on Burp, that I have Facebook.com being shown on the request, and as soon as I hit forward, it's processing the request as it goes on. So you can see all the requests that Facebook is making, because when you generally load Facebook.com, it calls link to all static links, it's CSS, it's JavaScript and everything like that. So you'll be able to see all of those on Burp, and you can just forward. Now if you don't want to keep hitting forward, you can just turn off the intercept, and it will basically pass all the requests through Burp, and because Burp says I'm not listening on it, let it go, it will just go forward and you can see all those requests. So we have that. And now, for example, let's say if you want to play around with a login, this is where the repeater comes to use. If I say, you know, asd@asd.com and asd for the password, hit login. For this case, because I have intercept off, I don't see any of those requests, and Facebook is directly trying to load those links, and it should tell me it was the wrong password. So I'll do asd again, and at this time I'm going to intercept on. That means I want to see all those requests. So for example, when I'm making a login, you'll be able to see that I'm making a request here. It still have my email right here. So if you want to search for a specific string, there's a search box right on the bottom, and once you type, for example, if I type ASD, it highlights all the request, all the text in the request or in the response that matches that keyword. So ASD, for example, shows up here. I hit as you can see, if you notice what I did, I right clicked and send the request to repeater. So now I have the request at repeater, and I can manually change this here and just play around with that like that. So I'm changing the email to sd@asd.com and hitting go, and you'll be able to see that I get a response from Facebook that I can render and see if there was any response. So as you can see, this the website that it loaded on the render page is really weird. It doesn't have the same format that you'll see from facebook.com usually. And the reason is, as I said before, it does not render JavaScript or CSS completely, so you will not be able to see the perfect design of the website. And that's repeater for now. Let's also cover one feature right away, which is really important. For example, here I can see that I typed password at ASD, but if you're testing something and you don't know what the password is, or like if you type the password and you don't remember it, you can just go to your HTTP history and look for that key. So for example, I made a request to www.facebook.com. Now I can just go to filter, and it will give me filter by search term. This is for pro version only, so sadly you won't be able to search, but you can do a search by extension. So let's see, if I just want to see all the PHP files, then it will try to show me all the PHP files. So if I do show only PHP, you can see that it only shows me all the PHP requests that it has made, and this becomes useful if you want to target a specific extension on your test. Like let's say if you know that a certain PHP file on this website has a SQL injection, you can just use the filter option to search or show only PHP files. Or if you want to do in scope or hide items with the responses, you can also do that. We will be going really in depth about HTTP history for all the filter by request, filter by MIME, filter by status code, and all of those in future videos. So for now, this is just the basics of it. Now let's go back to our repeater page. In this case, Facebook is kind of secure in terms of brute force, but let's say you have a website that allows login and does not have any kind of rate limit, so you can keep trying someone's password until you get it right. You can also do this automated through Burp Suite. What you can do is send your request from repeater to intruder, so you can either do right click and send to intruder, or you can hit Control-I, and this request will go on the intruder tab. Now as you can see, the target is set for the host as Facebook, port is 443. Now positions is where you want to brute force, what exact parameter you want to hit. Now let's say I already know the email is right and I want to hit the password. I'll just double click on the password here and hit add. Once you do that, it will tell Burp Suite this is where all the payloads will be inserted, this is where I want the brute force to occur or happen. So on the payloads tab, you get to select what you want to do. If you want to add from a list, this is only available for Pro, so you can either copy paste a list from online, which will automatically paste. So if I want to do it, I can just do this. And if there's a GitHub repo for checklist passwords, and if you just want to see all the list of passwords, for example this one, you can just do raw, and you can just do Control-A, Control-C, which will copy all this password, and then Burp, you can just hit paste, and all of those will paste, and you can just go with that. So because I've given the positions and payloads already, I'm ready to hit start attack. And here it will tell you the community edition of Burp contains a demo version of Burp Intruder. Some functionality is disabled and attacks are time throttled. What this means is in Burp Suite Pro Edition, the intruder attacks are done really fast and you can thread about 999 requests per second, but for Community Edition it is really slow, so we'll be able to see that here. As you can see, it takes a long time for one request to go through, and in this case, as you can see, we're trying new passwords on the password field every single time. So for example, if I go here, you'll be able to see on the password parameter I'm trying this, and if I go here, I'll have a password parameter with 12%20. The reason I'm saying %20 on all of this is because when I copied it, there were spaces in between all of these, so that created a space between the text. But that is how the intruder feature works. We will be using intruder a lot during some of our web app tests, but especially for some of the CTFs. But to make it easier for everyone and make it fair, those will not require crazy amount of brute force, just a regular amount, just to test how things work and then go along with that. But we understand that if you don't want to buy Burp Pro, you will not have the full feature of intruder. That's why we'll not force you guys onto brute forcing a really long password list or something like that. And if we do happen to do it, we'll find another way for you guys. So there are other tools that can be used for brute force. Now we have covered in this video setting up Burp Suite, downloading it, running with certificates, running without certificates, and we have also covered the section of how you want to listen on intercept options. In the future video, we will cover using Burp Suite and an iOS device, in which case you'll be able to use different ports, different interfaces, so that you can listen from your mobile device, or you can listen from your computer and send requests from your mobile device to your computer and then play around with the requests that are happening in the mobile app. So that will be in the future video. For now, this is all we're going to cover on this. We hope you enjoyed it. This is extremely useful, I hope, and please have Burp Suite ready and installed before the workshops. That way we don't have to waste our time on those. And thank you very much.